Hi, how are you today? I hope you are having a wonderful day so far. My name is Bailey Sarian, and today is Monday, which means it's Murder, Mystery, and Makeup Monday. If you are new here, hi, welcome, you made it. Every Monday I sit down, I talk about a true crime case that's been heavy on my noggin, and I also do my makeup at the same time. It just kind of keeps me busy. If you are interested in true crime and you like makeup, I would definitely suggest you subscribe. I'm here for you every Monday and Saturdays as well, but Saturdays is more just normal. Mondays is this, yeah. Thank you guys so much for all of your support and your love. Honestly, you liking, subscribing, commenting, disliking, not subscribing, watching, it means more than you know. I just love you guys so much. If you are ever curious as to what I'm using on my face, I list everything down in the description box down below. Please check that out if you have any questions or wondering what I am using. Other than that, I will shut up and let's get into today's true crime case. So today's true crime case takes place in Sydney, Australia, and it's between the 1980 to 1985. And this was like one of their biggest murder cases. So if you're from Australia, you probably already know this one, but it was new to me. I didn't know about it. So let me explain. The Family Law Act was passed in 1976. Now, this was allowing divorce to be seen by the federal government in Australia rather than the Supreme Court. Now, the grounds of divorce became less strict after the law was passed. So prior to this law being passed, the family law court couples, they needed a reason to file divorce. And it had to be like a good reason. You couldn't just file divorce because you weren't in love anymore, whatever. So some examples would be like insanity, cruelty, and then the most common would be adultery. And there is a lot more, but you just had to have a good reason to get a divorce. And when they opened this new court, I mean, people came from everywhere to get out of their unhappy marriages. I mean, no longer did they have to hire a private detective to catch their partners committing adultery or try to prove that they were in an abusive relationship. You just didn't have to really have a reason as to why you were getting divorced. It was pretty cut and dry. Like, I want out of this marriage and all right, you're good to go. So this is new, right? Like a lot of people are coming to get a divorce and at this new family court. Because it's new, things aren't necessarily running smoothly. Okay, family court, it could be like a pretty messy or like intense scene. I mean, some women were there trying to get a restraining order against their abusive husbands, or they were just trying to get away from their crappy partners. The courts itself, it had really poor security and it was really overcrowded because people were coming in. There was just a lot of fights happening. There was a lot of frustration. It wasn't like a safe place yet. And then on top of that, the courts also seemed to really favor women in custody battles especially. And then there were a lot of upset fathers. And honestly, looking back, even they acknowledged that, yes, they did tend to favor the women over men as far as like who had custody of the children. It just wasn't a very like equal system at that time. So people would leave there more just really upset. So then in 1979, Andrea Blanchard and Leonard Warwick went to the family court to pretty much file for divorce, but also determine custody of the children. So Andrea met her husband, Leonard, on a blind date in 1970. Andrea was 18 at the time. When she saw him, it was love at first sight, you know. And they fell for each other pretty quickly, which no shame on that. It happens. Leonard and Aundrea, they ended up marrying in October of 1974. Leonard, was 27 at the time, and Aundrea was 22 years old. For some reason, I didn't get a backstory on Aundrea. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Leonard. So Leonard was born in Helensburgh, Australia, and sadly his mom passed away when he was only 6 years old, and this is obviously like a devastating to the family. He had a younger sister who was a year younger than him. She was 5 at the time, and she ended up moving in with their aunt to make it easier on their father because financial reasons. Like, it was just really hard on their dad. And then Leonard ended up dropping out of school at the age of 15 so he can help raise some money. So he started working on a mushroom farm. And then when he was 18, he was drafted and was forced to join the military. And Leonard was not happy about this. Like, he was pissed. And then he was discharged about 3 years later. And then soon after leaving the military, he got a job as a fireman. Also, that's when he met Aundrea and they started dating and they got married, blah, blah, blah. Not long after, unfortunately, a dark side came out of Leonard and he started to be very possessive or jealous. And he was like this when they were dating, allegedly, but when they got married, it became very extreme. So he was extremely controlling, possessive, and abusive towards Aundrea. Leonard would show up to Aundrea's work pretty often and unexpectedly just to check up on her. He would tell Aundrea that she was not allowed to speak to her family or her friends. They weren't allowed to come over. She pretty much wasn't allowed to do anything unless Leonard said she could. Leonard was also very physically abusive towards Aundrea, and he would regularly, I can't say that word. So then in 1975, Aundrea is just ready to get away from Leonard, and she ends up moving out to live with her father. And while they were separated, Leonard would show up at her father's house. He would try and break in. He would try to convince Aundrea to come back. Aundrea decided she needed to get a restraining order against Leonard. Leonard would start to threaten Aundrea's father, like saying that he was pretty much going to kill him or wishing for him to die. And this really worried Aundrea, and she didn't want her dad to go through this and have to go through this extra stress. And she carried a lot of guilt because of this. And therefore, Aundrea decided to move back in with Leonard. And she said she did it in order to protect her father. And I just need to add this side note, and because I want to shut it down, because I know the comments are going to happen. How do I word this without being awful? Do not leave comments saying, well, why didn't she just leave him? If he's physically abusive with her, why didn't she just leave? Why did she go back? We're shutting that down. I'm going to be deleting any of those comments, and I'll tell you why. If you have never been in an abusive or controlling relationship, you have no idea how it goes. Okay, when you are in this abusive, toxic relationship, you do things that that make no sense. Okay, you're just so brainwashed. Of course, from an outsider looking in, it's easy to be like, why don't you just fucking leave? He's beating you. Get out of there. It's different when you're in it. Unless you've experienced it, no, we're not gonna blame her, because I know those comments will come in and they'll piss me off. For me personally, I've never been in a physically abusive relationship, but I have been in a very possessive, controlling relationship, and it was very toxic. And looking back, I'm like, what was I doing? What was I thinking? But in that moment, I truly felt like I couldn't leave, and it was like they have this power over you, and it's awful. And unless you've been there, you don't understand. It doesn't make sense. Yes. So Aundrea, she does go back to Leonard. And then some time passes and Aundrea finds out that she is pregnant. And then that year, their daughter was born. Her name is Trudy, and she was born in June of 1978. So in 1979, finally, Aundrea and Leonard, they go to the family court and they try to file for divorce. Aundrea, she files for custody of Trudy, and this heavily upset Leonard. And when Leonard realized that she was trying to get full custody of Trudy, I mean, this set him off. And daily, he was harassing Aundrea over the custody battle. He told Aundrea that he wanted Trudy at all costs. The courts end up granting Aundrea full custody of Trudy, and they grant visiting rights to Leonard, allowing Leonard to see Trudy at least twice a week. And then he also had to pay like $20 weekly for child support. And also he had to uphold the restraining order that Aundrea had originally filed as well. Now, Leonard over here, he didn't give two shits. Nay. No, he just wanted his daughter. And I don't even, this is a personal opinion that I'm about to say, okay? Because I don't know if he cared for his daughter or not. You know, he could love her tremendously. But I personally think that he only wanted Trudy because he knew it was going to hurt Aundrea. And the only way to control her would be to get Trudy or get custody of Trudy or just make her Aundrea's life a living hell pretty much. Anyway, so Leonard would show up to Trudy's school and it wouldn't be on visiting time. He would just show up whenever he wanted to and then either take Trudy or like hang out with Trudy when he wasn't supposed to. Also, during the days when he would be allowed to have Trudy, he would keep her longer than what he was supposed to or what he was allowed. So if it was 2 days, then he would keep Trudy for 4 days or for a week. And on one occasion, it really worried Aundrea, and she calls Leonard over and over again trying to find out, okay, where's Trudy? Like, what's going on? You need to tell me. Aundrea didn't have a car at this time, so she couldn't just like drive over there and see what's going on. So she's calling, and Leonard's not answering. He's just being a piece of shit. So then Aundrea, she calls her brother. His name's Steven, and he was 25 years old at this time. Leonard has kept Trudy. Like, I don't know what's going on. I can't get a hold of anybody. Can we take your car and go over to his house and get Trudy? So of course, her brother, being supportive and understanding, he's been like seeing her really go through all this. He's like, sure, no problem. She also just liked the fact that like she would have some kind of security when she goes over to Leonard's house to pick up Trudy. You know, if it was her by herself, Leonard, who knows what he could pull. Steven takes Aundrea down to Leonard's house and Steven goes up. He's like knocking on the door. Leonard answers and Steven's at the door and he's telling him like, hey man, you've had Trudy for way past your time. Steven even goes on to say like, we're not here to cause any trouble. I'm not trying to cause trouble. We just want Trudy back. Of course, this is irritating and upsetting Leonard. Steven tried to point out to Leonard that it just wouldn't look favorable in court for him if he was breaching the court orders. The piece of crap that he is, he pretty much just slams the door in their face and refuses to give over Trudy. But Steven tried his best to just keep it as like calm and civil as possible. Anyways, Aundrea went to the family court and said that Leonard wasn't giving Trudy back. They had to step in and eventually, I think it was like a couple days later, Trudy was returned to Aundrea. So February of 1980, Steven, Aundrea's brother. So he finished his work for the night and he headed over to his girlfriend's home just to visit before heading home, where he lived with Aundrea, Trudy, and their father. So they were all living together. Their father at this time, he was away on vacation. And so at home, it was just Aundrea, Trudy, and Steven. By the time Steven had gotten home that night, it was pretty late into the night, like almost midnight. He just kind of like quietly snuck in and then he went into the back of the house to his bedroom. And then that's where he just fell asleep for the night. In the early hours of the morning, it's believed to be anywhere from like 2 to 4 a.m. Somebody breaks into the house. An intruder breaks into the house and then they silently go into Steven's bedroom, which was like towards the back of the house, which that point everybody was sound asleep in the home and Steven was sound asleep as well. This intruder aimed a .22 caliber at Steven and shot him. The bullet entered just above Steven's right eye and it killed him instantly. The .22 had a silencer attached, so Aundrea and Trudy, they didn't hear a damn thing. Okay. The shooter then wrapped a plastic bag around Steven's head to contain the bleeding so it didn't make this fat mess and leave a trail. They wrapped Steven up in like his blankets that he was sleeping on. Somehow quietly carried Steven out of the house. So then the next day, it was Trudy's second birthday, or that same day if it was morning. It was Trudy's second birthday, and Aundrea wakes up. She checks to see if Steven was home, but when she saw he wasn't home, she didn't really think twice about it. Like, it didn't really faze her, mostly because Steven would stay the night at his girlfriend's house pretty often. And so when he wasn't there, it wasn't a big deal. But later that day, the phone rings and Aundrea answers it. Hello. And it was Steven's boss asking where Steven was because he didn't show up for his shift. And at that moment, Aundrea was like, instantly Aundrea said she was worried and she had that gut feeling that something was really, really wrong. It was just very unlike him to not show up for work, but like not let them know. Like it just wasn't like him. So Aundrea then goes like into his bedroom. And when she goes into his bedroom, she finds his wallet is on the bedside table. So Aundrea then calls the police to file a missing persons report. And the police ask Aundrea, is there anybody that would want to harm Steven? And she didn't even think twice. She instantly told police her ex-husband, Leonard. Now, as the days passed, the family and friends of Steven, they were all looking for him. There was just no luck. Nobody was having any luck finding him. No one was having any luck finding any clues. Nothing. He just vanished. So then, about a week later, a group of friends are boating Jerusalem Bay at Cairn Creek. It's about 25 kilometers north of Sydney. This group of friends is out on their boat and they see something floating in the water. Could you imagine? Gosh. Anyways, so the group of friends, they thought that it was a mannequin at first, but then once they got closer, they realized that it was a human body. They called police, as you should, and then the police came out and they were able to retrieve the male victim. And when they retrieved the male victim out of the lake, there was a rope that was like tied around his midsection, 11 bricks that were attached to the rope. And then there was another piece of rope that was tied around his neck with a garbage bag attached. Also, they see signs that the victim had been attacked by what was believed to be a bull shark in the area. And they believed whoever had placed the victim in the area tried to make sure he wasn't found by attaching bricks to the body. Whoever did this thought it would sink down and it would stay down, but this person hadn't taken into consideration that when you pass away, the body kind of like fills up with gases and you get bloated and like full of gas. It brought him to the surface of the water, like it was stronger than the 11 brick. So later, yes, the victim was identified to be Andrea's brother, Steven. And then a murder investigation was now underway. You know, when they look at Steven's body, they examine the rope and they see that this rope was a special kind of rope, a rope that is only used and issued to all of the official firefighters. Do you remember what I said Leonard does? Well, if you don't remember what I said, Leonard worked as a firefighter. So when Aundrea found out all this information, she knew it was Leonard. Leonard is brought in to be questioned by police. This is where Leonard got really difficult. So he petitioned his right to silence and he refused to speak. He refused to speak about where he was the night that Steven was murdered. Pretty much anything. He just refused to speak. Now remember, this is the 80s. And this is also Australia. So I don't even know how the laws work in general. But back then, from my understanding, you had to have physical evidence to charge someone with a crime. The fireman's rope links to Leonard because he's a firefighter. But at the same time, they don't have any proof that it's Leonard's rope. Do you see what I'm saying? So they really couldn't do anything about it. Police, they searched Leonard's property. And the only piece of evidence they could find, a piece of paper, and it has the word rope written on it. They don't find any other evidence, and because of that, they are unable to charge Leonard with anything. There's going to be a lot of names thrown at you throughout this whole thing, and I'm going to try my best to keep it simple. We'll see how that goes. Enter Judy. So Judy is Aundrea and Steven's sister. The whole family is devastated by the loss of their brother, Steven. But Judy, she ends up finding comfort in a new religion, and she becomes a member of the Jehovah's Witness. So she invites Aundrea and Trudy to join a few of their meetings with her and suggests maybe they become members of the Jehovah's Witness as well. Like, it's comforting to have this sense of community, especially in a time of loss. Now, that will be important later. So going back to the family law court, so the judge who had first heard Aundrea and Leonard's case, his name was Justice David Opus. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Australia, but from my understanding, they use the word justice in front of their names when they're like a judge, correct? So you know how we call people like Judge Judy? That's like the only judge I know. But they say Justice Judy. This guy, his name was Justice David Opus. He was the one who first took care of Andrea and Leonard, their custody battle and divorce and stuff like that. So he was the one that granted Andrea full custody of Trudy with only visitation for Leonard. Now, over time, Leonard was just being a shithead, not following the law, and not even listening to anything Justice Opus was telling Leonard to do. And Leonard had proven over and over again that he was not going to obey court orders. Like Justice Opus, he threatens to charge Leonard with contempt of court and also orders Leonard's visitations stop until their next court hearing as punishment because wow, I just had the biggest brain fart, that following the rules pretty much. So this pisses Leonard off. He wants his daughter Trudy, and he even said nobody's going to get in his way. So then, June of 1980, Justice Opus returns home from work, and this is just before like 7 p.m. He's about to sit down for dinner with his wife and 2 kids, and when he's like getting ready to sit down, the doorbell rings, and while getting up to go answer the door, the fire alarm from next door goes off. So there's this loud like, ha, ha, ha. Did you like my fire alarm? You know how fire alarms are. They're just loud and annoying. But it's going off. Like, it's really loud. So Justice Opus, he opens the front door. And instantly, when he opens the front door, he is immediately shot by a .22, the same gun that was used on Stephen, in the stomach. The noise of the shot, it's not very noticeable because of the loud fire alarms coming from next door. But after like a little bit of time, his wife notices that he's been at the front door for a while, so I should like go check on him. So she goes over to the front door and she finds him on his back, unresponsive. So police and ambulances have a delayed response time due to another emergency phone call of a random bomb explosion. Sadly, Justice Opus was dead. Investigation starts right away, and since the family court can be a place where like emotions run really high and people are really pissed off all the time, it's hard for investigators to narrow down who exactly would do this to Justice Opus. A $100,000 reward is posted for information on his death, and people start to think that maybe the bomb explosion had been intended to be a way to hold up emergency officials in the first place, which is why it took so long to get to Justice Opus's residence. So then investigators, they pretty much make up this list of upset men that have been clients of Justice Opus and would rule them out like one by one because a lot of them had solid alibis. Once they got to Leonard's name on the list, they're like, here's that name again, Leonard. So immediately investigators go over to Leonard's. They get like a warrant. I'm not sure what it's. Yeah. And investigators, they search Leonard's home and they find government toilet paper in his property, which was taken from his work as a fireman. So they charge Leonard with theft so they can get his fingerprints. And this might not make a lot of sense, but they knew Leonard was tied to what was going on, but they didn't have physical evidence to arrest him, right? So when they were going and they were searching his house, they were like, we just got to find something to arrest him so we can get his fingerprints, we can get him booked, and then hopefully get him to confess, right? So that's what they did. They're searching his home and they find something as simple as toilet paper. I've also heard it was towels. So one of those, or maybe neither, either way, it was taken from his place of work. So when they saw that, they were like, okay, that's it. Like, we'll just book him on that and then we can get him in there. So they take him on that and then they get his fingerprints and whatnot. And then once again, when Leonard was being questioned, he refused to speak to investigators. He maintained his right to silence. He refused to answer questions, and his reasoning was that because he didn't want to incriminate himself. There was no physical evidence to charge Leonard with. When they had Leonard in their custody, it was frustrating because they couldn't get anything. They couldn't get anything from him, right? So they had no choice. They had to let him go, which is like, oh my God. is what I wanted to scream. Now comes Justice Richard Gee. Now he stepped in to take over Justice Opus. Wait, what was his name? Justice Gee was now responsible for Andrea and Leonard's case. In 1981, Justice Gee ruled that Andrea and Leonard, their house, it needed to be sold and that the money would be equally divided between the couple. At that time, Leonard was living in it, not Andrea. So this would mean Leonard would have to move out. So of course, this doesn't happen. And then in 1983, Justice Gee pushes again that the house needs to be sold, and he enforces lesser visitation rights for Leonard to see his daughter. Of course, once again, the cycle begins. This pisses Leonard off and he doesn't comply. He's not going to move out and he's not going to see less of his daughter. So of course, during Leonard's visitation, he would again keep Trudy for way too long. It was supposed to be 2 days. He would keep her for 4 days. And it was this constant just back and forth. And he was just making Andrea's life a living hell. And poor Trudy, she was just in the middle of it. I forgot about her. So sad. Of course, Andrea then goes to the family court to let them know that Leonard has had Trudy for far too long. He's not giving her back. And Justice Gee, he orders a warrant for police to take Trudy from Leonard and bring her back to her mother. And Leonard was upset. This man, ew, he just... On the night of April, I don't know the date, April 1984, it was late at night, and inside the family court building, a bomb went off, destroying half of the building. It was believed that this bomb was supposed to go off in the morning when it was filled with workers, but luckily it went off in the middle of the night. There was a janitor there, I believe, but they were uninjured, luckily. So this happens, and then soon after, Justice Gee and his 2 sons are asleep at home, and it's about 1:30 in the morning. Everyone is sound asleep, and a bomb goes off in front of his house, and it completely destroys Justice Gee's home. Now, there were reports saying if you were looking at the house, you couldn't even tell it was a house, and they thought there's no way anybody survived this. There's just no way. But luckily, somehow, miraculously, nobody's killed. They have some serious injuries, but they were alive and they were going to be okay. The children and Justice Gee. So Justice Gee was taken to the hospital, and that's where police meet up with him and ask him a couple of questions. Who could have done this? Do they even need to ask? Justice Gee doesn't even hesitate, and he's like, Leonard. So I know this is so exhausting, but this is what the fuck, right? That was my responses the whole time when I was reading this one. I was like, what? Once again, Leonard is the prime suspect. He had no alibi, and when he was brought in for questioning, you guessed it, he said nothing. He refused to answer any questions, and police could not find any evidence linking him to the crimes. Nothing. We have a new judge or justice. So his name is Justice Watson. He took over Leonard's and Andrea's case the day after Justice Gee's house was bombed. This new justice is definitely reluctant to take on this case because of this ongoing pattern that's been happening. There were extra security measures that were brought in to keep members safe, and the cycle started all over again. So Justice Watson, he also restricted Leonard's time with Trudy. This pissed Leonard off. Leonard didn't want to listen to court orders, and he would keep Trudy. He would show up on his own terms, and it was just a mess. On the morning of July 4th, 1984, Justice Watson and his wife, they were getting ready for the day, leaving to go to work. And Justice Watson, his wife, went to the front door and she opened it because she's leaving. And as soon as she opened the door, a bomb goes off. Sadly, his wife was killed instantly, and Justice Watson, he was injured with the debris, and he was taken to the hospital for his injuries. Once again, Leonard was interviewed the same night of the bombing, and he just refused to speak. It's just exhausting, right? I know. I couldn't believe this was a real story. Anyways, police investigators, they end up searching his house and the fire station where he worked. They find no physical evidence and they can't charge him with anything because of that. Nothing. The investigators knew, like, dude, it's Leonard. We have to figure this out, but they can't do anything. All of the evidence is circumstantial and it's not physical. And at this point in the law in the 80s, you couldn't arrest someone based off of circumstantial evidence. It had to be hardcore physical proof. Now, like, people are really reluctant to work for the family court due to like fears, legitimate fear for their safety and their family safety. There were employees who were quitting because of what was going on, and then there were also employees who just weren't even showing up. They were like working from home or just like not coming in at all. Do you blame them? And then this case pretty much turns into the biggest and one of the longest cases in the history of Australia. So time goes on, and in February of 1985, Leonard goes to Andrea's home demanding to have Trudy. Leonard ends up getting physical with Aundrea, and he's trying to take Trudy away from her. I just had deja vu. Whoa. Leonard gets physical with Aundrea and tries to take Trudy from her, but Aundrea was able to like get away from him and lock herself in their home until Leonard finally left. Why the police wasn't called, I'm not really fully sure, but at this point, Aundrea realizes she just needs to get the hell out of Sydney for her safety, for her daughter's safety, and for everybody else's safety. So Aundrea ends up calling her sister Judy to help her pack and leave. Now, at this time, Aundrea had a new legal counsel. His name was Gary Watts, and he advised Aundrea to be more harsh with Leonard. He knew of the history. When Leonard found out who the new legal counsel was, well, guess who was the new target? I feel so bad because, you know, like, no one really wanted to work with Aundrea because of this whole mess. And it's like, ugh, this poor girl. Gary Watts, the new legal counsel, he recently had sold his property, and it was also then being rented out to a man named Peter and his two siblings. So Peter had gone outside to work on his car because he had to take it in to get registered. You know how that goes. You need to like fix it up so it passes. Anyway, so Peter lifts up the roof of his car. No, not the roof. What's it called? Hood. Peter, he lifts up the hood of his car and he's kind of like fixing or tuning things up, and then guess what he finds? He finds what looks to be a goddamn bomb inside of the engine. Or it's like next to the engine. It's somewhere in there. Peter got so lucky. The bomb, it didn't go off, but if the car was started, it would have gone off and he would have died. Police were called. It at first seems kind of random. Because this Peter guy, he has like no connection. Why would he be a target? But they soon realized, or they put the pieces together, that the address was listed still as being Gary's address. And it was like public information. Because of that, Leonard, he must have gotten the information, assumed that that was his house, and went and put the bomb in his car, thinking it was Gary's car. Now, this information about the bomb, it gets back to Aundrea, who knows, once again, it was Leonard. And she's like, that's it, we need to get out ASAP. So she calls her sister Judy. Judy asks the Jehovah Witness community to help Aundrea and Trudy, which they find somebody who could rent out the home that Aundrea was staying at. So Judy and friends from the Jehovah's Witness community, they help Aundrea move quickly, like out of Sydney. And then at this time, Aundrea's legal counsel Gary Watts, the one where the bomb was supposed to be at, he resigns for his own safety. So he steps away from helping Aundrea. So once again, the cycle repeats, okay? Leonard's home is searched. No physical evidence is found. Also, police investigators, they question Leonard's coworkers, and their coworkers are like, yeah, he's really standoffish. He's kind of mean. They tell investigators like he likes to hunt and he likes pornography, but not much else that they could tell him. So Leonard like tries to go get Trudy or something, but he eventually finds out that Aundrea and Trudy, they left. So when he finds out that they're gone and they left the home, he loses his shit. So Leonard is asking around, like if anybody knows their whereabouts, and he's just becoming more and more upset. Leonard, he knew that Andrea's sister, Judy, was a Jehovah Witness, and he calls the congregation asking, do you know where Andrea and Trudy are at? Or do you know where Judy is at? Do you know where they moved to? Do you know what happened to them? Most people would deny and say that they didn't know where they went, but one person told Leonard that they went up north. Specify where they went. They just said that they went up north. So Leonard is like, these people, the Jehovah's Witness people, they know where they're at and they're not telling me. It pisses him off. And so Leonard has this great idea. He's like, I'm going to break into the Jehovah's Witness church, which I guess he was going to look for any type of information, paperwork. He's looking for anything that will give him an idea or a clue or a location of where Trudy and Andrea are. The people who worked at the church came to the congregation the next day. They see that somebody broke in because there's a broken window, but also there was blood on the window. So there was a broken window, and whoever like crawled through the window, cut themselves, they left their blood on the window. So police were called, and they kind of just thought it was local homeless people who broke in, because nothing was stolen or damaged besides the window, but like there was nothing else that was messed with. Anyways, but police did take a sample of the blood that was on the window area, but at this point, DNA testing wasn't a thing yet. They could test the blood and find out what blood type it was, but that was about it. A week later, that same window was broken into, and it was just assumed that it was just, again, hoodlums, because nothing was stolen and nothing was really messed with. But that following day, okay, this motherfucker. During a church service at the Jehovah's Witness church or congregation, I'm not sure if they call it church. Either way, a bomb explodes in the middle of service. Many people were injured, and sadly one member was killed. They were lucky though that the bomb didn't make the building cave in. Instead, it made the building explode outwards, but it was completely destroyed. Immediately, Leonard is the prime suspect. At this point, Judy, Aundrea, they had moved out to Forster. I guess I should have looked up where that was. Police ended up contacting Judy and Aundrea, and they let them know like what had happened. And sadly, Judy just really blamed herself. She just felt really guilty that she had caused this to her congregation, to her church, to her community. Just really sad. And she tells police it's fucking Leonard. Like, I'm sorry for laughing, but when police are asking like, do you have any idea who this could be? It's like, you guys, it's fucking Leonard. Anyway, so once again, fucking Leonard, he's brought in for an interview. And at this time, he had a new girlfriend, and her name was Lorraine. Lorraine is quoted as being a rather low-class girl with tattoos and a rough manner, end quote. I feel like this is a personal attack. So she's also questioned, and Lorraine is kind of like a blabbermouth, and she was like telling police that Leonard was looking for Andrea and Trudy, that he was getting really agitated and annoyed, and Leonard pretty much shuts it down, and he tells police investigators he's not allowed to interview her anymore. She has a right to silence, and he like shuts her up, which is unfortunate because it seems like they probably could have got some information from her, but damn Leonard, he knew his rights. And again, once they questioned Leonard, they got absolutely nothing from him. So at this point, police were like, okay, we need a different approach, you guys. So they decide that they are going to give Leonard constant surveillance. Undercover cops are just going to follow him. They put a tracking device on his car. They have these undercover police officers like following Leonard everywhere, but they're keeping a distance, trying to make sure that they're not caught. But because Leonard is Leonard, he caught on. He knew that there were undercover cops, and he would start doing like little weird things just to kind of throw them off. He would just kind of drive in like circles leading them nowhere. He would do like load up his car with stuff and then go back into the house, and it just kind of messing with the undercover police officers. He would also go up to them when they were sitting in their car, and he would ask if they wanted like coffee or something. So he knew. So at this point, Andrea was exhausted. as I'm sure any of us would be. And she felt like she was responsible for all of these deaths. And she said, you know what? I'm just gonna surrender custody of Trudy to Leonard in hopes that the attacks and the deaths and the murders will end. Now, at first, when I read this, I was like, wait, what? You're gonna hand over your child to this psycho man? If I were in her shoes, I don't know what I would do either. I mean, it seems like she's trying everything, you know? And don't blame her, I guess. So ever since Aundrea gave up custody of Trudy, the bombings and murders had stopped. And then according to Aundrea, Trudy had lived with Leonard until she was about 16. And Leonard remarried, and the wife didn't get along with Trudy. And Trudy then moved out. Poor Trudy. I hope she's okay. So, due to lack of sufficient evidence, the case goes cold for 30 years. A joke, right? I know. You don't gotta tell me that twice. So the investigation continues, and in 2012, detectives went through the case again since the laws had changed. So they were going through their cold cases, taking a look at them again. In 2015, Leonard was finally charged with 32 charges. 4 charges of murder were amongst those 32 charges. At that time in 2015, he was then 68 years old when he was arrested. Investigators say that they discovered new evidence with technology that wasn't around back then when the crimes were committed. Now they were able to get DNA from the blood evidence that they got way back from the church window. As of right now, July of 2019, a trial hasn't even taken place yet. Yeah, he's just in prison waiting for trial. Leonard is now 72. He was claiming that like his lawyer was bullying him. His legal representative decided to pull out and stop representing him. And then he didn't have money to get someone to represent him. And you can't go to trial if you don't have somebody representing you. And it's just been this whole like mess. Also, Leonard stands by the fact that he is not guilty to these charges. And he stands by that. As far as what happened to Trudy and Aundrea, I don't know. I guess Trudy got married and she has children of her own. Aundrea, poor Aundrea, they were just put through the most. I'm not sure where Aundrea is at. I was kind of looking up where Trudy was, but I felt like, you know, I'm sure she doesn't want that shit. You know, just leave him alone. And that is the exhausting story about Leonard. And now the laws are different. You can arrest somebody if there is circumstantial evidence. Of course, more goes into that, but it's not like it was when this shit went down. It's just gotten better. Exhausting. This man did so much damage. It's insane. I just have to say this. If you or a loved one are experiencing domestic abuse, you can get help and you can get the F out of there, okay? I know if you are stuck in this cycle, it may seem like you are trapped. You can't go anywhere. You don't have anywhere to go. You don't have money. You don't have anything that could help you get away. But I am going to list in the description box where you can find help in your area, because there are tons of programs that you can go to and programs that will help you find safe places. You can get out. So I guess we will see what happens to Leonard. I have a good feeling that he's going to be found guilty. Let me know your thoughts down below on this case. Also, really quick, if you don't follow me like on Twitter or Instagram Live, I was on Instagram Live for like 3 hours the other night, and I was talking about, if you watched my toy box killer video, was about the toy box killer in Elephant Butte. Truth or consequences? T or C? Whatever. Anyways, news came out the other day that Cindy, David's girlfriend, the bitch is getting out Monday. Oh shit, today. Fuck. She's out right now. Can you believe it? Yeah, I'm not even kidding. When I read that, I was like, wait, what? She's getting out today, Monday. She served 80% of her sentence. They said that she had good behavior. Who knows what the hell she's gonna do? I'm so confused because like the toy box thing was effed up. How is she getting? Be safe out there, please. Be safe out there. Truth or consequences. She's coming for you. Maybe she's changed. Anyways, I hope you have a wonderful day today. Don't forget to check out my description box for any of the products that I used. Also, new merch. I love and appreciate you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful day today. You make good choices. Please be safe out there. And I'll be seeing you guys later. Bye.